afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's episode of Literature for West Africa. My name is MC Likileki, otherwise known as Gachiko Ekafo Amers. It's Miss TV, and remember that we have concluded our studies and interrogation of African poems, and we are going to begin our study of non-African poems today. All right, now this program is brought to you by Express Enterprises in conjunction with the Imo State Government and Eustabel International School as well as Emdores High School, all in Imo State. All right, today the first poem that we're going to, first non-African poem that we're going to consider. Remember, this is YX syllables, okay? And it's new, relatively new, and it's going to it's going to come into effect from May next year, right? Those of them who write in WAEC next year, this is what they are going to be seeing, in their question papers, okay? All right, so the title of today's poem is Still I Rise by Maya Angelou, okay? This is a somewhat motivational poem, and if you place it from its historical context, of the poet herself, that's Maya Angelou, a Black African, African American rather, all right? The experiences that give rise to the writing of that poem is a very unique one, and which is not far from the experience of Black people in the United States. Okay, so let's look at Maya Angelou as an individual. Okay, so she was born born into adversity, born of parents of little means, and then they got divorced when she was 3, so it plunged her into suffering, adversarial situations. Have you seen it? So this this is somewhat a testimonial, okay, a testimony of how she suffered and then became successful at last, okay? So it's the experience of most Black Americans in the United States is what is captured in this poem, okay? So still I rise. So rise, that's the pivotal word there. Rise from what? Rise from adversity, rise from the negativity of life, from all the things that wants to hold one bound, to the nether of poverty and seemingly inconsequentialism. All right. Okay. So something that want to make the things that wants to make one to be out of existence, to be as if one does not exist. Okay, that's what I mean by that. Okay. All right. So we begin this analysis by looking at what Stephen Covey said in his book Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, where Stephen Covey said that our most difficult experiences become the crucible that forge our character and develop our eternal powers. All right, so it's adversity that actually develop our physical and internal muscles. Okay, our resolve to succeed is actually fueled by adversity. What would be is actually a training process. That's what Stephen Covey said or wanted to achieve with that. So I'll take just few stanzas of the poem and see how I can explain. Now remember to pay attention. More explanation will be given in class by your different teachers. Okay, this is just a way of helping those that will be writing work next year. All right, still all right. Okay, so the first stanza of the poem: you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me into in the very depth, but still, like dust, I rise. Then the next stanza I want to look at is, you may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I rise. And the very last stanza we look at, out of the hordes of history's shame I rise, up from a past that's rooted in pain I rise. I am a black ocean, leaping and wide, waiting and swelling. I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise into a daybreak that's wondrous, clear. I rise, bringing the gift that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. So have you seen it? A poem with an optimistic tone. All right? Yes. Even though the experience of the poet persona is that of gloom and difficulty, but it's, at the tail end of the poem, it shows a prognosis of optimism. All right. Okay. So let's look at the key things that we highlighted in this poem. The first thing is, this dichotomy, the somewhat enmity that exists between, that was formerly, existing between the Western clime and Africans, known as racism. Okay, you could also, this is also traceable to colonialism. Okay, that, belief that everything that is African is negative, backward, of no consequential advantage or importance. All right, so that's what Angelo tried to enumerate in this poem. Okay, if you have read Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, you would also find out that's the central message of that novel. Okay, so that Africans were sometime in history oppressed. All right, this is captured in the experience of colonialism, slavery, the Middle Passage, all those negative experiences that African countries were, subjected to, during that period, especially those African immigrants that lived in United States, right, during the time of Great Depression, during that time of economic meltdown. Okay, in the United States, America was divided into the South and the North. Okay, yes, those of them that were blacks were subjected to, an adversarial situation that reduced them to what is classified as subhuman beings, people who are not in any way qualified to be called human beings. Okay, so what uh, are the major themes derivable from this poem? Remember, we read this in order to do what is called literary appreciation, to identify the subject matter, the theme, and all the literary devices that we used in this poem. That's what we are going to be examined on. All right. Okay. So we'll say that the first theme derivable from this poem is that of determination. All right, self-determination, and then which is going to definitely lead to collective determination. Okay, remember, the individual is a microcosm of the group. All right, so Angelo is, or the poet persona rather, is speaking as the voice of the black people in the United States. So have you seen it? So that individualism, that sense of self-discovery, fueled by adversity, is what this poem is talking about. That one shouldn't give up because he he or she is, subjected to adverse circumstances through omission or commission. All right. Okay. And then the next thing is upholding the virtues and values, of the people, irrespective of where one finds him or herself. Remember that there are some people who, move with the tide, who join the bandwagon very easily. That's what Angelo is advocating against, okay? Because at a point in this poem, it said, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, the tradition of the people, the worldview of the people, the perception, how people perceive things, how the African phobias, the baton that was handed to the next generation. This is a poem that talks about dispensationalism, okay? The phases of development of a given society and people. So have you seen it? So transcendence, from one generation to another. So, and then the next theme that we should look at also is the theme of hard work. All right. Yes, that Maya's parents, got divorced and she became enmeshed in, suffering and hardship. That didn't, make her to, say that all hope is lost. She didn't give up hope. She continued to persevere. That's the word, perseverance. When things are not going the way you want them to go, what do you do? Do you give up? And say that the world has come to an end. Of course not. You persevere, continue to push until you overcome. And then finally, the poem teaches us to respond positively to adverse situation. When circumstances, how do we see things? Do we, actually see the good side of adverse situation and negativity? It's that thing that you're involved in. Have you seen, it's a call for people to eschew myopism, short-sightedness, that feeling of what am I going to gain from it at the moment. If there's nothing I can gain from, there's this motif that runs through this poem, delayed gratification. It's not something that when you plant a corn, you don't harvest it immediately. It goes through a process, and then it's before you begin to enjoy the fruit of your labor. So that's what the poem is teaching us in essence. That there is reward for every labor. All right, but first we must accept the responsibility to start building from the scratch. All right, yes, start building from the very nadir until we grow and mature. All right, and begin to enjoy life. All right, so let's look at a few literary devices figures of speech that were used in this poem. Of course, the first one is the first literary figure of speech known as simile, comparison. The writer of this poem, compared her situation and the situation of black people in the United States to a lot of things using simile, all right, majorly as, um, as the major instrumental material of comparison. Okay, you have expressions using as and like, comparing two entities, that are not related. All right, and then you have the rhetorical question. All right. Of course, you see those questions asked. They don't demand your response. It's something that you should handle with your mind, or one should handle with his or her mind. And you see hyperbole, of course, glaringly demonstrated in the sixth verse of this poem. All right, you look at that. All right, and then it is also pertinent that you should look at allusion, historical allusion, that's used in this poem, referring to the Middle Passage, slavery, which also has, which if you look at it critically, you will also find its relationship, all right, a similarity with that of the experience of the Israelites in the wilderness. Okay, and then finally, refrain, the use of refrain and parallelism, repetition. Okay, all in this poem. Very interesting and motivational at that. Okay. All right. So we conclude by taking a look at what some of these people have said. The first person is Eleanor Roosevelt, who said that no one can hurt you without your consent. All right, that's what Angelo is preaching. And then finally, from Gandhi, um, the Buddhist, who said that they cannot take away your self respect if you do not give it to them. Have you seen? This is where we're going to be drawing the curtain today. Remember, I'm your brother and friend, MC Liki Liki, and this is It's Television. And this program has been brought to you by It's Enterprises in conjunction with Imo State Government, Eustabel International School, and Andrews High School. Until I come your way again, my name is MC Liki Liki. You can't forget what I was saying. Bye for